Okay, well, I'm going to kick off, and if anyone misses this, this will be recorded as well, and we'll be sending out links for the recording also. So good morning, everyone, or good evening, depending upon where you are. Just wanted to invite you all to the Strategies for Scaling XR and AI and Training session that we're doing today. My name's Joe Millward. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Asia Pacific at Skills VR. I've been working in immersive technology for over 10 years. Started very early and had a 3D background prior to that. I've worked with and developed on 20 AR VR applications in that time. Probably the biggest thing that I've focused on is ensuring that we have immersive strategies for numerous Fortune 500 companies that I've worked for, both in FMCG and in education and various sectors. I was lucky enough to launch the TAFE New South Wales Innovation Lab with some of my colleagues in 2017. And we also built the TAFE Immersive Learning Network in 2022, both focused on virtual reality and artificial intelligence, delivering VR applications to over 500,000 students over that nearly 4 years. And part of that, we actually won 2 Good Design Awards as part of the applications we developed with commercial partners. So just a quick overview of the session agenda. I will actually start with talking about the immersive learning journey and where you may be on that journey and the steps that you will go through as you start that process. Why I believe XR is the next modality for learning. The 3 Ds on how to scale XR, how to measure that success, what we do at Skills VR. I'll touch on generative AI, and I'll talk about where I see the future of this technology going. If you have any questions or you'd like to raise your hand, feel free to send that, and myself or Ruby will answer those questions for you. Okay, so the immersive learning journey. What I want to do here now is I will launch a poll for everybody. So it'd be great if you could fill out where you think you are on the immersive learning journey. And I'll start going through those, and I'll look at the results in a sec. So obviously, you start at sitting where you're just looking at what we call proof of technology. Basically, you're still trying to verify whether or not this technology is suitable for the initiatives you're trying to deploy inside your organization, or you're just trying to understand what this XR stuff is at all. So a lot of times, it's a great time to get excitement around the organization, around the technology, being able to do demos of maybe off-the-shelf content, or have virtual reality meetings with headsets, and just get people to get familiar with the technology. But it's a great space around, just getting a bit of that buy-in from the executive. And then inevitably people ask, well, what are we going to do with this thing? And that's where we start to move into the crawling stage with a proof of concept or a pilot. This is usually a time of where people can make a lot of mistakes, and it's an area where we love to be involved in. So with proof of concepts, and I'll talk a little bit about in subsequent slides, you want to make sure that you're wrapping it around something that's actually got some tangible outcomes, which allows you to move towards starting to scale. And when we start to scale, we're looking at expanding beyond an initial pilot group, which may be a small group of maybe up to 10 to 20 people, depending upon the size of the organization, or maybe even a little bit more. But when you start to scale, you're starting to work out, okay, are we embedding this inside a particular division inside an organization? How embedded is this going to be inside the organization? A lot of times you'll find that folks will have headsets attached to maybe guest Wi-Fi accounts, because they're still trying to work out the IT challenges. And that's definitely in that walking stage. You start to look at the areas beyond just the technology itself. So how is this going to work with our existing curriculum? How is this going to work with other parts of the business? And definitely trying to find a division that's the technology is going to be most impactful to start that scaling process. So you can then look at those successes and utilize that. So you move into the running stage, where you're looking at more content and more users, more divisions inside the organizations. The challenge you'll always find once you start to open this Pandora's box is once people experience content, they're always asking for more. And that's where we're able to assist you with that process and ensuring that the content you have is of level of quality. And also the data and analytics are able to inform you as you start to grow. And then you start to find things where you may actually start changing your entire process of how you actually deliver training, but then not only training. So when you start to move into your own VR culture as we're flying, you start to see things like where recruitment's affected by immersive technology, or communications, or other parts of the organization, marketing as well, events, etc. So once you move into that VR culture, you're fundamentally changing a lot of the parts of the organization, and they're being affected by the technology. But then you're also seeing tangible return on investment and other elements which can see that. So looking at the results, we've got a lot of folks that are crawling, which is great to see. And walking. So it's good to see we've got people already on the journey, and I'd love to sort of understand more about what those are. And yeah, happy to discuss any of the challenges you are having. But yeah, you can see it's definitely a process, and I've been lucky enough to be involved up until the running stage. I don't think there's many organizations that have their own VR culture. It's still limitations on the technology, as well as obviously, the process of going through this as well. All right, so why XR? I'm going to be a little bit blunt on some of this stuff. It's just the way I think and the way I work. Probably the number one thing is the ineffectiveness of e-learning. So I worked in TAFE for a long time and saw the amazing work that the team did with traditional learning. But realistically, what we're finding is that 75% of managers surveyed are actually dissatisfied with their L&D content and the function inside the organization. And a lot of times that is because the content is not fit for purpose, or it's dated, or it's not necessarily engaging. 70% of employees report that they don't have skills needed to do their jobs. And this is where a lot of times e-learning is focused on the wrong things, where it's focused on compliance and a tick box exercise, as opposed to necessarily improving skills and building skills out. And a lot of times we find that it's got limited budgets and there's not much focus on it. I think the technology can assist with the effectiveness of e-learning, and actually having the two modalities can work off each other. So I'm a big proponent of multimodality delivery, including obviously in person as well. Accessibilities of devices are probably the one thing that I've really started to see, where the cost of devices are not necessarily decreasing too much more, but the difference between when I first started, where you were basically looking at $5,000+, you needed a headset with a powerful PC, you needed space to have the various lighthouses to be able to track the space. It was quite a sophisticated and challenging deployment. Now with things like the Quest and the Pico and these standalone headsets, you've basically got a sophisticated Android phone attached to a device, if you want to make it simple. So it's relatively easy for folks to get started. The investment's relatively small, and then we've got fantastic tools like we have with Skills VR to be able to scale that technology. So we're starting to see that people aren't asking me anymore why VR as much, especially people that have started that journey of either crawling or sitting or crawling. But a lot of times they're saying, how do we get this into the organization faster? What steps do we need to take? So it's becoming a more known technology, and most folks, when I do demos, I ask them, have they tried VR before? And probably about 70% now are saying, yes, I've tried VR previously. Integration of XR and AI, and I'll talk a little bit more about this on subsequent slides, but I definitely see that the generative AI and AI in general is the perfect partner for XR. And we'll start to see that rapidly increase in the next 2 to 3 years. Expectation of learners is another one. So you've got students, or you've got younger generations in particular, but even older generations. I'm an avid gamer. who spend time in these amazingly high fidelity worlds, metaverses such as Fortnite, etc. And then they go to a static website and a video in their training organization, and there's a disconnect with what we deliver as entertainment versus what we deliver as training and learning. And I think that XR can bridge that gap. And then lastly, the immersive benefits. The primary thing that I've always said with virtual reality in particular is it reduces the distraction to zero. So folks aren't trying to look at emails or look at their phone. They're 100% focused on the training at the time, and they also increase their recall as they're in those scenarios. Anything that's remembered in a simulated 3D environment is actually remembered as a true memory. There's white papers and research around that. So folks are able to sort of think that they've done this task previously, and the recall is a lot higher. And then at scale, the cost of virtual reality is actually less than other modalities. So it starts to get to an inflection point where it's cheaper than face-to-face, and then eventually it's cheaper than even e-learning. So the 3Ds. We've got a hand up there. Bear with me. So Lee, if you want to chat, if you want to ask a question, you can chuck it in the questions, the Q&A, and I will answer it or get Ruby to answer that question. All right. So looking at the 3Ds. This is some of the stuff that I've learned over the years that I've spent in the various roles that I've had. A lot of the times there's a huge focus on developing content or acquiring content, and without thinking about the other areas. So, especially with a pilot and a POC, you're enamored with the technology. You want to build something that's custom for yourselves, and there's a huge focus on the application itself, possibly the analytics and possibly integrations, but most of the time it's on that app itself. The fail point that tends to happen is that you're focused on the technology and you're not thinking about how this technology is going to be deployed into your organization, and you're also not thinking about how this is going to be delivered by facilitators or how it's going to be consumed by learners. So it's important that even a POC, all three parts of that delivery are actually thought about. So you want to ensure that you're speaking with ICT. You've got these headsets are connected to a network. As I said, it may be a guest network with a smaller deployment, but ensuring that the device is integrated into what you're doing. And even with delivery, you want to ensure that it's supported by this e-learning technology, by the traditional learning. So folks feel like they're not being thrown into something that's completely isolated and it's not part of an overall learning strategy. So it does take a little bit of strategy and thinking to do this, and not just throwing the technology against the wall and using it as a shiny toy, because what you'll find is that while you may have a lot of energy and excitement around the new technology initially, you'll start to have senior management and senior folks inside an organization asking harder questions around, okay, what happens if we do scale this out to 1,000 people? If you don't have that deployment strategy in place, you won't have those answers. So it's actually thinking about the steps beyond the POC, and ensuring that you're able to answer all those questions, but then also building it into that culture that we're trying to aim for. So you've got it so it's a presumed technology that's always added to any strategy moving forward. So that's where having these three components, and then all of that obviously delivers data. So you need to ensure that you're tracking usage, you're tracking performance inside headsets, you're tracking the health of devices, which is stuff we can do with and assist with you at skills. But the most important part is ensuring that all of these things are at least answered, even if they aren't started, even if there isn't a huge amount of information yet. But you're saying we're looking into this space. We haven't been able to engage with IT yet because it's still a pilot or whatever. But actually having those plans in place will ensure that senior management have a bit more faith in what you're trying to achieve.
Joe Lee has asked a question. In the previous slide, you mentioned that you can help with the implementation of VR. Can you assist with the creation of content that is mapped to a unit of competency?
Fantastic question, Lee. Yes, we definitely can. We have our learning team is experienced with mapping those things, and so, same with myself. I've spent a lot of time with UOCs and ensuring that that the content that you're developing is tied to those units of competency. It's an important step, and it's definitely part of the delivery and deployment stages of this as well. So you want to ensure that as I mentioned, that content feels like it's part of an overall unit of competency. So it's not like an opt-in that sits on the side. It's actually integrated into that. And that was important things that I did when I was at TAFE to make sure that we were supporting whatever was being done with the traditional modalities. And that's face-to-face, obviously, as well as e-learning. Yeah, no, great question. And we're more than happy to talk about helping you with that. All right. So what do we do? And this is a great segue. What skills VR have? We have an enterprise platform which allows you to basically manage devices, ensures that we can the learners getting the content that they need at the time that they need it. So that's really important, and that's where learner journeys will start to shift and change. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the future slides. The enterprise platform allows you also to have those analytics, which I said were incredibly important, but then also manage things like the health of the devices, working on Wi-Fi, all the other bits and pieces. There's a myriad of things to think about as you start to scale these solutions, and the enterprise platform will assist you with doing that. We also have a bunch of off-the-shelf content. It's great to get started with some content as well, and we're in the process of bringing on partners to expand that library as well as having partners that will assist with us in creating content. We do have a content creation kit, which is a Unity-based solution that sits on top of Unity. So if you do have any developers in your organization or third-party organizations that work with Unity, we can assist them with the content creation kit, which will allow also to have common analytics, a common analytics framework with all of the applications, regardless of where you're getting that content. So either it's third-party content, our off-the-shelf content, or content that's being developed, we're able to, with an API, plug in analytics that compare apples to apples within modules and within pieces of content. And then we can also bring in things like 360 video and WebXR content as well with the immersive learning. Consultancy definitely is an area that we focus quite heavily on. We've got some fantastic experienced folks in our organization. Andy Trainer, who I can see is on the call as well, is my US compatriot, so North America CEO, who was the driving force behind the deployment of XR into Walmart. And we've got a great range of folks across both hardware and software with a huge amount of experience to assist with consulting. It's definitely a big step to move into this space, and you can spend a lot of money or waste a lot of time if you don't have the right people advising you. And then lastly, XR as a bundle. The XR as a service bundle basically allows you to take away all of the thought of the components of bringing an enterprise deployment to your organization, where we can, in one cost and one bundle, we can bundle hardware, software, the enterprise platform, all the components you need to be able to deploy this for one cost, which can be amortized across your organization, and you can utilize OpEx budget instead of CapEx budget with the bundle that we have. So just talking about measuring success, the POCs need to have a clear ROI, and it needs to be something that is actually going to have a significant change in the organization, not just we're going to get 1,000 people through this. That's not going to change a C-suite's mind on technology. So it needs to have something that's actually going to affect the business, and it could be either saving money, increasing efficiency, reducing safety incidents, or some other metric that you're trying to achieve. But you want to ensure that there's really clear goals and measurements. You want to put expected outcomes in those ROIs, and you want to make sure that it's achievable enough that you're going to blow it out of the water. You want to ensure that the success of the initial POC is so a foregone conclusion that the C-suite is going to invest on the second phase, and that's where the phase expansion is a part of that. You'll get more confidence from senior management if you have a multi-step approach already planned and an assumptive plan that you're going to broaden this technology across your organization based on the success of those ROIs. So that's where, ensuring you've got thinking about both content, hardware, integration into ICT and learning environments is incredibly important. And it just shows the sophistication and maturity of the strategy that you're trying to deploy. Switching to BAU, this is a huge part as well. A lot of times the technology will sit with innovation labs, which it did with TAFE and myself. We've got to shift away from that and move into a process where not only are we doing things like having support from ICT, for example, hardware refresh programs, but also ensuring that other business units are taking ownership of this and it's not staying within the innovation space. It's great to keep the innovation team or the innovation group continually coming up with new ideas, but you want to move it into a place where maybe HR or training or other parts of the organization are taking ownership. And then they'll actually start to build it into their daily usage. And they'll also find areas where you haven't thought about how you could use the technology. I always find that when I was at TAFE, for example, I was speaking to trade teachers, and they were coming up with fantastic ideas that I never would have come up with. So it's really important, and it's the only way you're really going to move to a VR culture. And also just some of the stats on this stuff is pretty well known now in the market, but, the stats speak for themselves. You've got things like, faster to learn. People prefer to learn in the technology. Virtual reality and augmented reality are the only modalities I've ever used in training where people say, I'd love to do that again. Can I do the training again? You never hear anybody saying, oh, can I watch that safety video a second time? So it's a fantastic modality just for the engagement level itself. But as I mentioned, it's also more affordable, and we tend to find folks are more confident as they're going through that process as well. So talking about the future, my favorite subject. I spent a lot of time researching. I spent a lot of time looking at the trends. I'm lucky enough to be able to spend that time, and I've had a lot of insight and been able to see where the industry is going. Probably the most fundamental thing, as I mentioned, is the effect of AI. So we're moving to a place where we're going from static content of modules that is something that's built and it stays the same, even though if you do it multiple times, to more dynamic content where you may actually be able to request content, or content may be developed at runtime. So it'll actually be tailored to you based on where you are at your learning journey, what you're trying to achieve inside a certain session. There's myriad of things. You may want to replicate a previous maybe Zoom call that you've done, where you could actually bring in a virtual human to be that person on that call and take that call again, which is really quite exciting. So we're going to move to this place where content will still be important, but it won't be it'll be tailored to your individual requirements based on how the AI is interpreting what you need, which is super exciting. And we're definitely talking about 2 to 3 year window at the very minimum. Mixed reality is another huge area of growth. So obviously with the Quest 3 and the Apple Vision Pro, mixed reality is definitely we're seeing a lot of interest. So for folks who don't understand the difference with mixed reality, basically you're turning on the cameras on a virtual reality headset and being able to see the real world and apply virtual objects to that real world. And that could be a virtual human, but that could also be you doing traditional physical training, so doing a hands-on training process, but having augments on top of those objects in a real world scene. So you're picking up something and it's telling you what the next step is on a particular process, or you're able to pack a shelf in a supermarket, for example, and it's giving you a layout plan. Things like that are really exciting. We're going to see that increase. So I'd probably say that in the next, say, 3 to 5 years, we're going to see that augmented reality or mixed reality is going to be the preferred modality, with probably 70% of that being in AR, and then VR being when you want to get into a full simulated environment that you don't actually have access to. So we're going to see a shift, but both, whatever you do right now in virtual reality can still be applied to mixed reality and augmented reality as well. And then moving from modules to mentors. So I think the interesting thing is, as I said, moving from static to dynamic content, we can, with the AI tools that we'll have, you can have these intelligent agents that can start looking at your overall career. And instead of you just learning all the time, it's actually giving you advice. It's giving you potentially even talking about your mental health inside an organization. So you could have this daily engagement with a virtual human who could actually guide you as you start to bring. So it's no longer these tick box exercise compulsory training elements. It's more like, how can I increase your skills to be more effective inside your role, to be more effective for the organization? So these intelligent agents will have access to all of the information of your organization, all of the information of a particular industry, and be able to advise you on the next steps in your day-to-day work or in your overall career. So it's a really exciting area, and we're going to see that AI will continually influence that as well. Some of the stuff we have on our future roadmap, custom AI models. So being able to take a custom LLM from an organization and embed that into a virtual environment will allow, you have the way that you talk inside an organization is always unique. So these LLMs not only will know everything about the organization, but be able to voice in the organization's tone of voice and the way they speak, which is really exciting. We see adaptive feedback as well. So increase in that's the content that's being developed, being tailored by what's being said by the individual learner, but then also having contextual responses based on how an organization would normally respond to something. I've mentioned dynamic experiences, and I think that's going to increase. Intelligent branching is really interesting. Not only can you do it from intelligent branching from a training path, but also with the analytics, it can actually start building out a learning plan for you as well. That is a little bit more dynamic. So it's not everybody's going through the same steps and the same courses the same way. So you're going to see that the AIs are going to start to interpret where your skills are and where your levels are and how you like to learn, and start to build out intelligent processes to get you to your desired outcomes. And then the analysis as well. So for being able to have contextually relevant content that is then analyzed by an AI, where a manager or the organization can start to get a better understanding of you as a person inside the organization, and not just have that you passed or failed or whatever. So it can be a lot more tailored to your specific skills and your specific requirements. And that is it. Any more questions? Does anyone have any burning desire to ask something? Lee, you're allowed to talk.
Hey Joe, thanks for your time today. You mentioned before you had a you could help organizations implement VR into their learning. So you have just for clarity, you have a full framework for an organization to follow, and you'll step us through that process. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, our organization's done this numerous times. We've actually even done certified training with one of our site safe project, where it was basically equivalent of a white card. So yeah, it's definitely we've got some experience in that. And then myself, I've obviously got experience with the time at TAFE, where I've spent a lot of time thinking about how we ensure that this stuff sits within a certified deployment. It's really important to make sure that's it can't feel like it's separate. It's got to be part of something, and support those units of competency in other areas.
That's great. Just one more question, and
Sure.
I just wanted to know as well, because I'd like to reach out to you and talk more, obviously, after today's great presentation. What kind of, if I had a unit of competency and I wanted to build an AI VR interactive content to go live in our LMS, obviously that would be catered to Tin Can, SCORM as well, I'd assume. And what time frame on average would you be talking about? A 12-week turnaround to get one of those VR e-learning modules developed? Is that correct?
It depends on the complexity. Like it's definitely how long it's a piece of string. I mean, if you're talking about something that has really bespoke and unique simulated environments, so manual dexterity and other areas, it could take a little bit longer. It just depends on how complex. If it's something that is relatively something we've done before, or something that's relatively easy, yeah, you can look at that sort of 12 weeks is not a bad time frame. And yeah, but it just depends on the complexity. I've worked on projects that have taken half a year. It just depends on how sophisticated you want to go.
That's great. You've answered all my questions. Thanks for your time.
No problem. All right. Do we have anyone else that wanted to ask questions?
We have a question from Beck in the comments.
Great.
What is the funding landscape like in Australia to get this off the ground? The UK has some great funding opportunities with Immersive City. Is there anything like this in Australia?
Not that I'm aware of specifically. I mean, there's definitely funding, and the government's been fantastic. We did a fantastic job with the initiative that was funded at TAFE. There is obviously R&D grants and other things that we have in Australia. The biggest thing I definitely find is getting the organisation themselves to start that funding process, and then you can usually find grants and other things. I've had a lot of partnership programs that I've worked with multiple organisations, where I might have, an organisation with a burning need. For example, we did a large project with iCare at TAFE, where they fit the bill, but we were doing a lot of the work. So there's a lot of ways to find investment, and then also, I mean, investment doesn't need to be a huge amount when you're just starting as well. So as I said, those successes, if you can change a metric such as cost to deploy or reduce cost of sale, things like that, the costing, if you can really affect change inside an organization, the funding will come. Like, that's probably the biggest thing I say is you've got to be really clear on what you're trying to deliver. But yeah, there's definitely initiatives. The TAFE Immersive Learning Network that I helped create was a way to ensure that TAFEs across the country were speaking from the same hymn sheet, and they weren't doing things, they weren't repeating themselves or duplicating efforts. And I'd be keen to continue looking at opportunities like that within Australia and New Zealand as well.
We also have a question from Graham. Could the product be used in education, particularly with a focus to help neurodiverse students?
Fantastic question. Definitely. I've done a lot of work with autistic students, and actually had a student in our lab that had both autism and was quadriplegic. So we used a brain-computer interface device to assist them with that. The sophistication of this delivery will start to show its benefit as we start to see more integration, where you'll be able to tailor even the visuals of a particular module based on someone's neurodiversity. So obviously you've got to be careful with autistic and other folks who may be impacted by really impactful visuals and noises. So but yeah, there's definitely an opportunity to be able to tailor that, and also people learn different ways. I mean, I'm a visual learner, and being able to have that ability to tailor how content is being delivered, I think it's going to be particularly effective. All right. Fantastic, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I think we'll wrap it up there. This will be recorded and sent out to you. If you have any other questions, you can contact us on the QR code on my screen, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn here as well if you aren't already connected with me. Thanks for your time this morning, and more than happy to have a chat further.